Well, welcome to my channel, Soul Cycles. I'm Elaine Kuzmeskus. I'm a professional astrologer, and I've also been certified as a medium and a hypnotherapist. Today, we're going to talk about astrology, and especially what the planets are going to be doing in 2024. Now, you might ask, how does astrology work? Well, I personally believe that when we take our first breath, that we become electromagnetically imprinted with our stars. And as we go through life, we are influenced either in different directions, but we always have the free will to make our own choices. So today we're going to talk about the outer planets because they affect everyone. And it's interesting. We have some big changes coming up in 2024 and 2025 because the planets, Pluto, and also Uranus are making some changes. Pluto, which represents mass consciousness, has been in the restrictive sign of Capricorn. And while it's in Capricorn, it's made everybody aware of control. It's made people aware of a need to control the population with the prison system. Also, more truths are coming out about the Federal Reserve. And we know that the two words for Pluto in Capricorn are wealth and control. We also know that there's a potential for a profound healing with our relationship with finances, money, and to help us to get a better understanding of overcoming the prison of debt. So interesting themes. And Pluto has been in Capricorn from 2008 until 2024. And this spring, it's going to be going into the sign of Aquarius. Now, it went back into Aquarius a little bit in 2023, but it will be firmly in the sign of Aquarius as we go into the spring of 2024. And I think this is going to be a sign of the times. We're going to find more mass consciousness about being our brother's keeper or our sister's keeper. We're going to be more aware of the need to redistribute finances. And it means different things to different people. We find that sometimes when Pluto enters a sign, it takes a while for it to filter down into everyday consciousness. And so as we're beginning to talk about things such as helping to erase some of student debt, there should be more interest in making lower loans for first-time buyers and being more interest in socialized medicine or allowing medicine to be given to the masses. We also have found, especially in Connecticut, where I live, there's free community college if you're a resident of the state of Connecticut and graduate from a Connecticut high school. Of course, there's always a downside, and that is I do feel we are going to see higher taxations with more of these programs coming into being. Now, the purpose of this podcast is to give a general overview of the trends in 2024. And it's a long-term cycle when we're beginning to experiment with new technology. Aquarius is a sign of technology. And these things such as artificial intelligence will become more everyday. There's also going to be new inventions and new ways of using our intelligence. Now, the main areas of life associated with Pluto in astrology, the planet Pluto, and by the way, I still believe Pluto is a planet, as do all astrologers. And Pluto as a planet represents transformation. It represents the subconscious mind, how bringing things to the surface. And also it has a great deal to do with intensity. So we'll see how these things play out. Now, the next planet that's going to be very influential in 2024 is the planet Neptune. And Neptune is a higher octave planet. That means higher consciousness planet. And it rules spirituality. It rules illusion. It also invites us into meditative states. Poetry, music, and dance are all Neptunian events. Now, Neptune has been in Pisces since 2012, so we've been used to Neptune in Pisces, and it's going to remain there for approximately one more year. To me, Neptune in Pisces can be very helpful for the medical field because the sign Pisces is ruled by Neptune. So I feel very positive with new ideas about Neptunian ways of dealing with illnesses. We're going to see more interest in using meditation. Psychologists call it mindfulness instead of so many drugs. And we're going to find more interest in the afterlife. I think this is wonderful because for many, many years, people talked about, in fact, about 2/3 of the population do believe in life after death. But now we're finding people coming out and writing books, such as Eben Alexander's Proof of Heaven. He was a neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience and validates many of the ideas that our mystics have been talking about for centuries. So I do think Neptune in the sign of Pisces will bring more understanding of mysticism and the afterlife. Since Neptune in Pisces also rules medication and drugs, it also rules oil. So what does that mean? I think it means that we're going to find better medications to help our illnesses, but also I think we're going to find the issue of oil being very seriously taken into consideration. And we may find by the time that Neptune leaves the sign of Pisces that we're going into more oil independence, but we'll see what that brings later. Since Neptune also rules the unconscious mind, it's very helpful for understanding psychology. Now, the next outer planet that I'd like to talk about is a very important one for change. And that is the planet Uranus, because it does rule changes. It rules large-scale changes. It rules technology. It also rules kind of a higher consciousness of the mind. And right now, Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018 to 2026. And during that time, we've had new ways of dealing with finance. Taurus is the sign of money, finance, wealth. It's a sign that's farming, things of the earth. So while Uranus is in Taurus, we're going to find more interest in new ways of doing business. For example, PayPal has become very popular, and other digital means of finance. And of course, we've all heard about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is very interesting. It was invented in 2008, just as Uranus was going into Taurus. And I do feel as it goes into 2026, there's going to be more regulation of Bitcoin because it will have gone through one cycle of Uranus and Taurus. So this will be interesting to see. Now, in astrology, we like to look at the history of these transits. And last time that Uranus was in the sign of Taurus was during the 1930s. Now, fortunately, we don't have the Great Depression because of all the progressive programs that were put into operation by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But I do feel we've been in the Great Recession, that things have been going backwards as the price of groceries and housing goes up. People's wages have remained pretty static. In the 1930s, the last time that Uranus was in Taurus, President Roosevelt signed the United States Social Security Act, which provided unemployment, compensation, and pensions for the elderly. So watch for more sweeping reforms in Medicare and Affordable Care coming in as we finish up the Uranus and Taurus. Now, one of the things that's very concerning about having Uranus in an earth sign such as Taurus, it can represent earth changes. So we have to be aware of the fact there have been tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanoes, and I think that's going to continue into the spring of 2025. Probably the safest places are places in the mountains such as Colorado or high up in the mountains in New England, Western Mass. And people that live close to the coastline have to be a little more careful, especially California. Okay? Now, with Uranus in the sign of Taurus on a personal level, I think people are going to be more interested in living in smaller communities, also family structure, and hopefully Uranus and Taurus will bring new forms of farming. We hope that will come into being as well. Okay? Now, in terms of Uranus and Taurus, there are hot spots in the world, and some of them we already know about: Ukraine, Taiwan, Iran, North Korea, and of course Israel. These areas are likely to continue to be volatile as we try to get some type of peace. Unfortunately, as I looked at the chart of Israel, that's not going to be over right away. It might expand to other countries. So we have to be very careful with the Mideast. These are just general trends that I'd like to talk about. And I also would like to remind you that everyone has an individual horoscope. And these planets are going to affect you on an individual level. Welcome to my channel, Soul Cycles, dedicated to astrology, mediumship, and also hypnosis. We are working very hard to raise the consciousness and present new ideas to our audience. I'm going to continue my talk on the planets in 2024. We discussed previously how Pluto is going to be in the sign of Aquarius starting in the spring of 2024, making us more aware of our need to be helpful to each other as a society, and more social programs being introduced by President Biden and the people in power. We also see forgiveness of student loan to a certain degree, expanded educational opportunities, and also some type of program for first-time buyers coming in 2024. Well, also with Neptune continuing to be in the sign of Pisces, a lot of interest in the afterlife, mysticism, but also a big boost for medicine. And the other thing we discussed in the previous video was Uranus. Uranus is a planet of change, and Uranus is making a lot of aspects this year. So we're going to find with Uranus in the sign of Taurus, there are new ways continuing of finance, but also interest in farming. And the other thing that's important to remember with Uranus in the sign of Taurus, that it does make an aspect coming in the month of April where it will conjunct Jupiter also in the sign of Taurus, which should be very good for new technology and new ideas. But I'll talk about that a bit later. To continue the outer planets, Saturn is a very important planet, and Saturn is in Pisces. Now, Saturn entered Pisces on March 7th, 2023, and will remain there until May 24th, 2025. And this is a perfect time to look inward, especially the water signs, which would, of course, be Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. It's an important period for them. We also find that Saturn represents limitations and structure. So Pisces is a sign that is mystical, intuitive. So we're going to find more structure, more scientific interest in mysticism, and also things to do with the water sign Pisces, which would be the ocean. We find there'll be more interest in addiction because, unfortunately, the planet Neptune, sometimes if it's adversely aspected, it can cause addiction. And also more interest in spirituality, taking it more seriously. We find that Saturn is a practical planet. So while Saturn is in Pisces, there's going to be an emphasis on saving. Saturn in Pisces also represents how we govern. And in the sign of Pisces, we're going to find more interest in finding new ways to get along with people, to govern in a positive way. And Saturn represents karma. And we think of karma as being the lessons of life. And if you work with Saturn in a constructive way and you learn the lessons, life goes on pretty well. You have a good foundation. But if you refuse to learn the lessons of life, be it a nation or an individual, then often the future is harsher. Saturn is the teacher. It's the great teacher, the great educator. Now, esoterically, negative aspects teach us what we didn't learn in previous lifetimes. However, positive aspects from Saturn give us extra strength and energy and a sense of faith. We expect to see Saturn, as it's in the sign of Pisces, making more progress with addiction issues, more progress with spirituality, and also perhaps some restrictions along with it. Now, Saturn in Pisces is going to make us a little more practical. And Saturn in Pisces also rules the following: So it will affect oil, drugs, pharmaceuticals, charities, fishing, hospitals, the arts, and spirituality. Some of the themes of Saturn in Pisces are revisiting traditional religions. And I do feel intuitively the Catholic Church is going to have to accommodate itself to people perhaps they didn't before, to be a little less restrictive. There's also a great desire to understand our lineage or our ancestry. And there's a feeling that as we work more constructively, that there'll be more positive results. The other theme was Saturn in the sign of Pisces, which rules the end of life. There may be more compassionate care for those who are facing end-of-life issues. Now, the next planet after Saturn, which affects the world, and is the mundane planet of Jupiter in Taurus. And Jupiter's been in Taurus almost 8 or 9 months, and it's going to end its tour of Taurus on May 25th, 2024. Now, Jupiter is, in general, a planet of abundance. Saturn constricts, Jupiter expands. So it represents good luck, faith, and kind of a fun-loving aspect. Jupiter has a lot to do with travel and immigration, and can affect legal issues as well. So some of the things that you might think about is Jupiter can be kind of the spotlight of the zodiac. Since it spends about a year in each sign, it affects people for that year. There's going to be changes as we go into the spring, because we're going to find that in May of 2024, Jupiter changes signs, and it goes from Taurus, where there's a lot of emphasis on material goods, to the sign of Gemini, where more emphasis is on education, communications, and I think technology will expand quite a bit while Jupiter is in the sign of Gemini. We also note at the same time in April 2024 that the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction occurs. And this is a big change, because we go from a slow-moving side, Taurus, which is suddenly going to get a jolt or a little more step up of energy. And when Jupiter and Uranus meet in Taurus, watch for new innovations coming in, new technologies, new systems. Now, they may not be on the market till 2025, but the ideas will be out there and will give people a sense of hope. Watch for technology advances in the financial system, farming, computers, as well as anything to do with artificial intelligence. Now, as we go into the latter part of the spring, Jupiter is going to be in Gemini, and Jupiter in Gemini shifts the energy. It often attracts good fortune and the development of knowledge. That's why I feel artificial intelligence will explode. Just think about it. Instead of having somebody, a human being, hand you your Big Mac, it'll be a machine. Watch and see if that doesn't come in about a year. Since Gemini is an air sign, I think there'll be more travel with Jupiter in Gemini. And it might be that people will say, now that the pandemic's over, all the places I want to see as we go through the spring of 2024 to June of 25, this is the time to do it. So I see a lot of the baby boomers, of course, love to travel. Now, the next part of my analysis, but again, these are potentials that may happen in 2024, is to look at the eclipses. The eclipses are very important, especially the solar eclipses. So I'll mention the 4 eclipses, but I'm going to zero in on the 2 solar eclipses. The lunar eclipse occurs March 25th, and it will be at 5 Libra, and that affects our sense of justice. The total solar eclipse is April 8th at 19 Aries, and that's going to be very important because it's going to be seen over the whole United States. The theory about eclipses is wherever they're viewed is where the changes are going to take place. Then we have another lunar eclipse on September 17th, which is at 25 Pisces, very close to Neptune, so it may bring out some new spirituality or intuitive knowledge. And the annual solar eclipse is October 2nd, and that will be at 10 Libra. And the 2 solar eclipses I feel are the most important. So we call the April eclipse has been called the Great American Eclipse. because it is a total eclipse of the sun, April 8th, 2024. And we will begin to see changes in the United States. Now, a lot of people don't realize, but there are two types of eclipses. The North Node, which is considered luckier than the South Node eclipse, which occurs in October. We find that that many times when we have eclipses, there may be new information coming out. And we may also find it symbolizes the masses, things that are going to be very important. During the eclipse, the planet Venus, which rules finances, makes a good aspect to Pluto. So it could give a boost to the stock market, especially if there's new technology coming out. However, we will find that 2024 is going to be a slow year, just as 2023 was financially, because there's a Saturn-Mars conjunction in Pisces, which may cause some shortages or slowdowns. We find, in general, 2024, we're going to find that it will be similar, I would say, ups and downs, mild gains, but I don't feel that it's going to crash. Sometimes you think, oh, it's going to be terrible, but I don't feel that. I feel it's going to be a slow year, a recession, but certainly because it's a presidential election year, the economy should kind of go along. Okay, now we have a new era coming, and that's because the planet Uranus going into Gemini and Pluto going into Aquarius will elevate the consciousness and bring in new technology and new growth. I think we're going to see less capitalism as Pluto goes into the sign of Aquarius, and more curbs on big corporations, and also more interest in the arts and humanitarian concerns. So Pisces is a water sign. Aquarius is an air sign. So we'll find a rise in air travel with when Uranus goes into Gemini, which is good. Maybe new forms of air travel or faster planes. And we'll also see with Neptune in Pisces more intuitive and more spiritual things coming. I think, to give you an example, there's going to be very strong opinions in 2024. Just even take the abortion issue, for example. Whether you are pro or con abortion, you have to realize the Piscean age was largely Christian and looking more towards siding with the right to life movement. On the other hand, we look at the pro-choice as being more an Aquarian type of decision making, where they believe more that a woman should have the ability to decide her own fate. So even the change of planets is going to make a shift. We find that as we get into more Aquarian knowledge, the Pluto in Aquarius, that knowledge is going to explode. You don't have to go to a university to get an education. You could do it online fairly easily. And we're going to find more access to technical information that may have been hidden from the public. Things such as UFOs, files coming out, new ideas coming out that have been held back a bit about ways to heat our homes, new type of fusion energy coming, which will be very good. I'll leave you with a few thoughts, and one is from Madame Blavatsky. Madame Blavatsky was the woman that started the Theosophical Society, and she wisely said, "Do not be afraid of your difficulties. Do not wish you could be in other circumstances than you are. For when you have made the best of an adversity, it becomes a stepping stone to a splendid opportunity." So I do hope 2024 will be a year that will be a stepping stone to better opportunities for you. And I will be doing more videos on the second half of 2024, but I'd leave that thought with you. If you'd like more information, I do an astrology blog that's on my website, www.theartofmediumship, which talks about the full and new moon every month, as well as gives a little bit of information about the person of the month. So this month we have Franklin Delano Roosevelt as our Aquarian of the month, so I hope you'll enjoy reading that.